It's here! It is finally here! The PlayStation 5 has arrived. And I've actually owned all of the PlayStations since the OG original, so I was incredibly excited to get started. But the question is, should you actually buy one of these? Well, spoiler alert for many, this is one heck of a gaming machine, with some surprising new features, in addition to the wholeheartedly expected, but absolutely no less spectacular, leap in performance. But while PlayStation very much does run in my blood, the Series X is really good, and there's a whole host of brand new PC gaming hardware as well. So ultimately, how does this stack up? And if you're looking to get into next-gen gaming, is the PS5 the way to go? Find out after this. This video is brought to you by ASUS and Republic of Gamers with their Black Friday offers. Many fabulous deals are already available, with more coming over Black Friday and Cyber Monday. You've got notebooks, gaming laptops, motherboards, routers, graphics cards, headsets, monitors, keyboards, and mice. That's a lot of stuff. Whether you're looking to spice up your gaming den or you're working from home zen, there's something for you here. It's all available on one handy dandy website with each retailer and every deal listed, so it's easier than ever to find just what you're looking for. To learn more, just search ASUS Black Friday in your browser or follow the link down in that description below. The PlayStation 5 then. Let's start with a massive design change. The fact that this is, well, massive. I mean, just look at this thing. It's quite funny really. I'm not sure why it needed to be exactly this big. It's a bit of a puzzle. Maybe it's down to heat displacement, or maybe they started designing a spaceship and the team got retasked. Who knows? Frankly, it looks pretty silly if you compare it with Xbox's much less powerful Series S, but to be fair, for most people's home entertainment system, it'll fit in just fine, assuming it's quite large of course. To Sony's credit, the extra size has allowed them to pack in a whole bunch of extra features and all of that next generation goodness. So what exactly are we looking at here? Headline specifications include 4K gaming at 120 frames a second, real-time ray tracing, an insanely fast solid-state drive, and the most intuitive games controller I think I've ever used. To be clear, the PlayStation 5 can output at 4K 120, just like the Series X, but don't expect many games to actually be able to do this. 4K is crazy difficult to drive as is, let alone at double the frame rate. You will get some lighter titles that will achieve a native 4K resolution, but the majority of 120Hz games are probably going to dip somewhere towards 1440p before upscaling to a full-fat 4K output. Devil May Cry worked an absolute treat here. And although the unlocked frame rate wasn't able to get a constant 120 frames a second, something that I did see over on Gears of War on the Series X, the extra smoothness is no less appreciated. Besides, it's so nice to actually have the choice of modes now. Choice of modes on a console. Fantastic. With DMC allowing you to pick between like a 4K mode, a performance 120Hz unlocked mode, and then one with ray tracing. So not only can you understand what all of the settings do a little bit better, but you can actually play to your personal preferences. Unfortunately, not all the games are going to give you these options, which is definitely a shame, because you need to bear in mind that 4K 120Hz TVs at the moment are crazy expensive. So giving the player the option to tailor to their individual setup and personal preferences makes a whole lot of sense, so I really hope that this does become a bit more of a standard feature. Let's drill a little bit deeper into that ray tracing mode though, as to be honest, it's a bit of a disappointment, as it drops a lot of frames, with the same being said on Team Xbox, so this isn't exclusively a PlayStation thing. It's not a toggle switch for on versus off, it's currently more like turn it on and then drop the frame rate or resolution or both in exchange for some fancy reflections. And I am sorry to burst everybody's bubble, but I just don't give a hoot about slightly better puddles if it means trading in things that are just far more noticeable. Let's hope this improves over time and is something that the developers can optimize for maybe 1440p 60 FPS with ray tracing, as that really would be the sweet spot. And unfortunately, the bad news doesn't stop there either, as the PlayStation 5 is missing some key features that can be found on both a gaming PC and the Xbox Series X. At the time of filming at least, there's no variable refresh rate support, so if you have a fancy TV or monitor, this won't be able to help you reduce the stutter and tearing. And speaking of monitors, there's no support for Quad HD 1440p displays. So at the moment you're going to be limited to 1080p unless you fork out for a fancy 4K panel, but this would then require HDMI 2.1 if you wanted high refresh, which is very rare and would get very expensive. And then finally, there's no support for Dolby Vision or Dolby Atmos. I think this can decode the discs, so if you have a Dolby Atmos setup, you should be fine if you just want to play 4K Blu-rays, but no Atmos gaming and no Dolby Vision across the board. So on paper then, I would say that the PlayStation is lagging ever so slightly behind the Xbox. And heck, that's a smaller console if you really want to make a list. But ultimately, none of these things really matter when you start talking about the games themselves. And controversial, maybe, but I'd say that the lineup on PlayStation has always had more must-play exclusives, with Detroit, Horizon, God of War, and of course Last of Us all on PlayStation. Currently we only have Demon's Souls on PlayStation 5 to really dig into the whole next generation experience, which yes, is a remake, a £70 remake, £70 that I can't get back, I'll add. But calming down for a second, I will say that this game really does show us exactly what next generation consoles can do, and it's quite astounding just how good the game looks, feels and runs. And it's definitely worth noting that during all of my gaming tests, this thing has been practically silent. I've heard a few people complaining about coil whine, and if you've ever used a PC graphics card with coil whine, it is not remotely the same thing. If you have any noise in the room whatsoever, you will not be able to hear this. It really is quite remarkable, both the PlayStation and Series X. I would like to give a PC-centric round of applause to, because honestly, they're way quieter than pretty much any PC really that I've ever built before, barring custom water loops. I'm sorry PC, I don't mean it! Don't leave me! While not a PlayStation 5 exclusive, I'll also tip my hat to Spider-Man Miles Morales, as this game looks flawless. And assuming you're playing in the 60 FPS mode, it really does feel the business too. Like, for real, swinging along the streets of New York is so pleasurable. Getting into those action encounters, using your webs to pin people against a wall is always quite amusing. This is a really good game and it does look and play a lot better on PlayStation 5. Having said this though, the default mode is 30 frames a second with ray tracing, which yes, you're going to get some fancy screenshots from, but why would anyone want to use this and why is it the default? I understand why the developers have put it in there to show off the abilities of the consoles, but please don't make 30 frames a second the default mode, because a lot of people won't understand that there is an option to change, and this is just going to bring disappointment to everyone, including myself. Sony, you can do better. Moving swiftly on though, let's talk about my new favourite thing about the PlayStation, which is actually the controller. And on the face of it, not really that much has changed. I'm not a big fan of the new design in terms of its visual appeal. I think it does look a little bit chunky, but this has the benefit of actually fitting in my hands a lot better. It's a very comfortable controller to use. The actual layout's not really altered that much. They've made the PlayStation button look more like a PlayStation button, so it's harder to hit, which is a little bit annoying, but a good thing at the same time. There's a mute button as well, which is useful for quick voice chat, and then we've got USB-C on the top, and then this little touch bar is still present, but the lights are actually in the perimeter, which is pretty cool. But unfortunately, the battery life of this controller isn't really that good, and I'm afraid I have to say that the Xbox controller, even though it uses AA batteries, does tend to last a whole lot longer. But the real ace in the hole, if that's the right phrase for this, is actually the haptics inside this controller, because as you're playing, the way it reacts to whatever's going on in game is quite remarkable. You do have a speaker in here as you did before, so playing Demon's Souls as you're walking along and picking up items, you do get a little bit of noise come out of here, which is pretty cool, but you get these adaptive triggers that actually vary the resistance. So if you're firing a gun, for instance, then you'll find that it actually reacts to what's going on again in the game, and then when you're moving about, the actual vibration is somehow a lot more realistic. It doesn't feel like a binary vibration or no vibration. When the Xbox One controller came out, it had those adaptive triggers and they were pretty cool, but they didn't really do that much. I would say that that's almost like a 2 on the haptic scale, whereas this is probably like an 8 or a 9. It is a completely different beast, completely different controller, and there's just no contest, I'm afraid. This wins hands down. Next up is speed, and yes, PC-centric like. That is so lame. I don't know why I thought that would be good in the script, but you know what, I'm just going to leave it in. It features a custom Gen 4 NVMe drive, which means no whirring noises, no waiting around, and in the future, games that load instantly as you roam around vast open worlds. General navigation does take a little bit of getting used to. I'm not entirely sure whether I like the UI. It's not clunky, it's just a little bit confusing to be honest. But when mastered, you can snap around screens and assess all of the options in no time at all. The thing that you're going to notice above all else though, even without Xbox's quick resume tech, has to be that games load up in seconds. You'll be playing your game before you'd even got to the Windows desktop if you're on a gaming PC. It doesn't matter whether you're cold booting a game or just loading maybe a save or something, it is ridiculously impressive, and for those that have never used an SSD for gaming before, you are in for a real surprise. And this is the thing with next-gen consoles on the whole, I cannot believe they crammed so much tech inside, so much capability, for £450. When PlayStation 4 came out, you were looking at 1080p, maybe sub 1080p gaming, and the PC was doing way higher resolutions than that. But it's almost like we've flipped things around now. This is more powerful than a lot of people's gaming computer. If you were to build your own gaming PC that was similar in volume, it would cost you a whole lot more money, at least double. Crazy! Of course, the consoles aren't quite as flexible as a gaming computer, but they absolutely don't need to be. I won't be becoming a full-time console gamer anytime soon, but I purchased the PlayStation with my own cash, and I am very happy with my decision. But should you do the same? Well, technically speaking, the Xbox is a little bit better. It is smaller, more feature-rich, and comes with the seriously underrated Xbox Game Pass that gives you access to a huge library of Xbox games from day one for a tiny price. This brings the cost of entry way down if you compare it to the PlayStation, especially if you bear in mind that you can use Xbox One controllers on the Series X, whereas you can't do the same with a PS4 controller on a PS5. But ultimately, my recommendation is to buy based on the games, because both of these consoles are awesome, and while they're not perfect, on the whole, they're really, really impressive stuff, and I don't think anyone's going to buy either of these and be disappointed. Having said that though, if I were to buy one console, I think I would probably go for the PlayStation just because I would miss those exclusives and I am a PC gamer. But if I was to buy one console with no ties whatsoever, then I honestly think the Xbox is just a little bit better at the time of filming. Maybe it's going to go with more media centers and fit in, but then I would miss the DualSense controller, which is why it's such a difficult decision. Controller really good, console slightly better. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts down in that comment section below, which one you prefer, which one will you be buying or pre-ordering. I'll try and leave some links to the products down in the description below, but I think we both know that's going to be a little bit difficult for a while. But I would absolutely love to hear from you. If you want to see a full video on PCs versus consoles, then you can find that in the end screen. That video has actually gone live now. It's pretty cool to make. Hopefully it went down very well. But thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you've enjoyed it. Thank you to me for actually providing this review sample, and I'll see you in the next one.